Good morning, this is Angela with Parkrose Permaculture. I can't seem to win with the noise today. There is a constant kind of tension and frustration that I have living in an urban area where petroleum-powered products just constantly make noise. Either airplanes or helicopters or lawnmowers and weed whackers. I often think about what it would be like to live in a more rural area without all the noise pollution and having more freedom to just listen to the sound of nature without the grating sound of petroleum-powered machines. But it is not meant to be. We can't have everything we want, and I'm perfectly content with where I live, and that's just the price I have to pay for living here. So anyway, on to the topic at hand this morning. I am down in my orchard because I mentioned a plant in my 2020 garden tour video, and I got some questions asking me to expound upon this plant a little more, asking me to talk about it in more detail. And I think that it's a great plant, and I want to talk it up. I think it definitely deserves more attention. And that's this tree right here, which is the Shropshire Damson plum. Now, the Shropshire Damson is not commonly grown in North American gardens. It is originally from England, obviously, with the name Shropshire Damson. And even there it is declining, and it is I'm not sure if it's categorized as a heritage variety, but it is an heirloom variety, but it is a variety of plum that is trying to be conserved because it used to be commonly grown and is now dwindling. So this is a variety that is worth growing in your garden. You cannot buy it in the store. And it has some special characteristics to it that I think makes it important and worthy of a spot in your garden. Let's talk about why this plant declined first. So the Shropshire Damson is bred from the wild bullace plum, and it is one of the oldest recognized varieties of plum. It was first mentioned in the literature in 1676. Much like its wild ancestor, the bullace plum, it is a small plum, and it is not a freestone. It is a clingstone plum. And that is one of the reasons that it kind of fell out of favor. It's small. Let's go look at it here. It's a small plum. These are not ready to pick, but this is all the bigger they will get. They'll be ready next month and into October. So they're little. They're not freestone, which makes them a little bit more difficult to process. The tree itself is slow to produce. So this tree is 5 years old. And if we come down here and look, you can see here, I have enough plums on it that I'm going to get one batch of jam out of this tree. But it often takes 10 or 20 years to get this tree into full production. So it is slow producing for a plum. The Shropshire Damson is a plum that has a bitter skin and a sour inside. It is not often, you have to have a really special palate to enjoy eating this fresh. But when you make a jam out of it, it makes a stunning deep red jam, and the flavor is just the plummiest. When I think of what a true, complex, vibrant flavor of a plum should be, I think of the Damson. There is no plum jam that tastes as good as Damson Plum Jam. It's also good for making brandy. You can soak it in gin to make kind of like a Damson gin instead of a sloe gin. It will turn it a pretty pink color. It's just a great plum for making chutneys. It just has an extra layer of complexity to it that modern varieties of plums don't have. It's just so worth growing and worth being patient for. It is a small plum tree, right? So let's back up a little bit. It's hard to see in here because my orchard is so crowded. I'm easily able to keep it at 6 feet. It does sucker like many plums, so you may have to remove suckers every now and again at the ground level. I can see right now in my garden I have a couple. And it is prone to, like any plum, setting up water sprouts, which look like this. They're these long, straight shoots. They will not produce fruit. they are worth pruning off. And the secret to pruning plums is to prune in dry weather. In my climate and in most climates, plums are prone to bacterial canker. And if you prune in wet weather, you are more likely to get that setting up in your tree. And the only cure for that is to prune off infected material. It causes gummosis, like a oozing sap. So I'm gonna come in here and I wanna remove all of these straight up shoots, right? Okay. And I wanna do that in dry weather. Now, I'm gonna come through and take the rest of those off when I'm done filming. When you train this plum, plums are very prone to splitting when they're heavy with fruit. So let me come down here low and show you what you want to do when you're training a plum and what you don't want to do. When you're picking how to prune it, you want to encourage wide angles. So I don't know if you can see here, this crook is very wide, almost horizontal. This one too, wide crooks. This is what you don't want, a narrow crook. And I'm going to come in this winter and I'm going to take out this leader. I have 2 leaders. I left 2 because this plum I was sort of worried about frost damage when it was little or chicken damage. And so I left 2 leaders, and now I'm going to come in and take this one out in the winter, because when you have these narrow angles, you are more likely to get splitting. You really want to encourage these wide angles. That creates stability and your tree is less prone to breakage when loaded with fruit. So just remember that that's true for any variety of plum, not just the little Damson here. Okay, so these plums I will be harvesting in late September to early October. They have the benefit of being that kind of a late variety, so that I can process them when the weather is cool, convenient for running the stove to make jams and chutneys, and also it means that I have my early varieties, like my early Laxton. I have my mid-season varieties, like my, I actually only grow European plums. I need to make room for 2 Japanese plums, but my Jean-Claude Beauvais Green Gage, or some of my September varieties, like my Methley and my Stanley plums. This is my last plum to be ready. As I was saying before the helicopter went right over, I really like that broad season of harvest, starting in May all the way till the end of October. And having a diversity of varieties helps me achieve that. So I can have plums all season long, and this is such a great plum for preserving. Such a great plum. So if you have room for a Shropshire Damson, I got this one at One Green World. I'm not familiar with any other nurseries in the United States that carry this variety, but One Green World does ship. I've had a lot of success with their plants and highly recommend them as a nursery. Think about giving this tree a space in your garden. It's not the prettiest plum. It can be thorny, much like a wild plum. So maybe don't stick it right along the path like I did. But it's definitely a unique culinary experience you cannot get in the store. If you are looking at wanting to have a cottage industry or a farmer's market garden, and you want to plan ahead, think about a Shropshire Damson, because you're going to be providing the public with a unique crop that makes a really special brandy, really special liqueur, really special jam or chutney. And I think it has, there's a niche there, right, that can be filled. It's not like other plums. So I hope that answers the question for the folks that were wondering why I grow this variety of plum and some tips for growing it. If you have any other questions that you want to leave in the comments, or any thoughts about growing or experience growing Shropshire Damsons, please share them with me. I'd love to talk about your successes or issues that you've had. And I'll be back soon. Thanks.